When we talk about pain in the life of a believer, the first truth we have to confront is that pain is never random. It is never chaos. It is never a meaningless interruption to your life story. In the divine narrative, every moment you live is written with precision, and every experience you carry is designed to shape the heart in ways you may not understand at the time. Allah does not allow a believer to go through anything that does not serve a purpose. This is why the believer's relationship with hardship is fundamentally different from the one who sees the world as accidental or purposeless. When a believer experiences grief or fear or confusion, it isn't just an emotion. It is a signal that something within needs to be recalibrated, redirected, or awakened. Sometimes the very thing that hurts you is the thing that prevents a larger harm from reaching you. Sometimes the disruption that frustrates you is what saves you from drifting further away from Allah. And sometimes the pain that feels unbearable is, in reality, the extraction of something toxic that you refuse to let go on your own. There are moments when Allah shakes the heart, not to break it, but to reorient it. Because if you were left to your own comfort, you might have settled for a life too small, a faith too shallow, or a path too distant from the one He intended for you. One of the profound psychological realities we overlook is that human beings rarely change during comfort. We change when something forces us to look inward, when something interrupts the illusion of control we thought we had. Pain breaks the routine. It forces honesty. It forces humility. It exposes attachments. And in those moments, the heart becomes more receptive, more vulnerable, more open to truth than it ever is during ease. This is why so many people say they found Allah at the lowest point of their lives, not because Allah wasn't present during the good times, but because their hearts were too distracted to notice. You may think your pain is evidence of abandonment, but often it is the very proof that Allah is paying attention to you. A person left to wander without guidance may go years without ever questioning themselves. But the one whom Allah intends to elevate is the one He disturbs, the one He shakes awake, the one He refuses to let drown in heedlessness. Your heartbreak, your setback, your unexpected loss, these might be the moments Allah chooses to recalibrate your spiritual compass, turning you back toward Him in a way that comfort never could. And the wisdom behind that is remarkable. If the goal of life were simply to feel good, maybe comfort would be enough. But if the goal is to grow, to purify, to rise, to become someone capable of carrying deeper faith and deeper responsibility, then pain becomes one of the most powerful tools in that journey. Not as punishment, but as refinement, not as cruelty, but as care. You polish metal through friction, you strengthen muscles through pressure, and you deepen hearts through vulnerability. The believer understands that what feels like breaking might actually be building. What feels like loss might actually be protection. What feels like an ending might actually be the first step toward a better beginning. There is a moment, sometimes you don't realize it until much later, when you look back and you see the divine pattern. You see that the difficulty pulled you out of a harmful path, or pushed you toward a better choice, or forced you to rediscover Allah in a way that transformed your entire life. And in that moment, you realize the truth. Your pain was not wasted. Your tears were not unnoticed. Your struggle was never meaningless. It was guidance in disguise. The believer's comfort lies in knowing this. If Allah allowed you to feel it, He intends to use it. And when He uses it, He transforms you. And when He transforms you, that pain becomes one of the greatest mercies you were ever given. Let that truth settle deeply. The moment you understand your pain has purpose is the moment it begins to heal. When we think about the moment Allah turns pain into mercy, many of us imagine it as the moment the situation changes, when the difficulty finally lifts, when the burden becomes lighter, when the answer to our DU letter to BFA Macron appears. But in reality, the transformation begins much earlier. The mercy often arrives long before the external relief. It begins the moment the heart surrenders, the moment you stop fighting the decree of Allah and start trusting it. The moment you replace the question, "Why is this happening to me?" with "What is Allah guiding me toward through this?" that shift is internal, invisible, and deeply personal. Yet it marks one of the most profound turning points in a believer's spiritual life. Human psychology teaches us that suffering is intensified not by the event itself, but by our resistance to it. The fear that comes from uncertainty, the frustration of feeling out of control, the anger at unmet expectations. These reactions can make the hardship heavier than it needs to be. But when a believer accepts that Allah's knowledge encompasses all things, that His wisdom is perfect even when our understanding is limited, something remarkable happens inside. The chaos settles, the heart softens, the mind stops wrestling with the what-ifs and the if-onlys. This inner surrender does not remove responsibility or effort, it simply removes the illusion that you were ever the one in control. When that illusion fades, peace emerges, and this is where the mercy begins, because Allah's mercy is not only in the outcome, it is also in the state of the heart as you endure. Sometimes He will keep the hardship exactly as it is, but He will change the way your heart carries it. You still walk through the same storm, but suddenly the storm no longer feels like punishment. It feels like a pathway. You still face the same challenge, but now it becomes something you can breathe through, something you can navigate without drowning in it. This psychological shift is an incredible form of divine compassion. It is the difference between walking in darkness and walking with a lantern. One of the most overlooked spiritual truths is that Allah might delay external relief because He wants you to experience the internal relief first. If He removed the hardship too quickly, you might miss the growth that only struggle can teach. If He granted the answer the moment you asked, you might not discover the resilience, humility, or sincerity that hardship draws out of you. The delay is not neglect, it is preparation. It is Allah giving you the emotional and spiritual strength to handle what you're asking for, or to endure something even greater with clarity and stability. Think of those moments when you finally stop fighting the reality of your situation and instead say, "Ya Allah, I don't understand, but I trust you." That is not weakness, that is spiritual maturity. That sentence represents a heart that has walked through confusion, fear, and disappointment, and has emerged on the other side with conviction. It is the heart acknowledging that certainty in Allah does not require certainty in circumstances. This level of surrender is not passive resignation, it is active faith. It is not giving up, it is giving in to the one who knows you better than you know yourself. What people often realize later is that the calm they felt in the middle of the storm was a form of mercy far greater than the eventual resolution. Because not every hardship is meant to be solved immediately, but every hardship is meant to shape something within you. When the internal shift happens, you see the world differently, you interpret trials differently, you even see yourself differently. Instead of breaking you, the hardship begins to build you. Instead of isolating you, it connects you to Allah. Instead of consuming your thoughts, it refines your perspective. That is the moment when your pain transforms, not because the situation changed, but because you did. So the real turning point is not the end of the hardship, it is the awakening of the heart. And when the heart finally surrenders, Allah's mercy is already unfolding quietly, gently, powerfully. Remember this truth: the moment you trust the author of your story is the moment your story begins to make sense. One of the most humbling experiences in life is realizing how limited our vision truly is. We plan, we hope, we imagine a certain future, and then something happens that feels completely disruptive. A loss, a setback, a rejection, a closed door, and in the moment it feels like life is unraveling. But what we often fail to see is that Allah's mercy doesn't always come in the form of the things we want. Sometimes it comes in the form of the things we never expected. The very events that seem to break us might in reality be the events that save us. Allah opens doors through pathways we would never choose for ourselves. He creates solutions from angles we never considered, and He prepares futures that we didn't even know to ask for. This is part of his name, Alelaletter, 1E60, Macron F, the one who is subtle in his care, gentle in his planning, perfect in his timing. You don't always see his hand while the story is unfolding, but you recognize it when you look back and connect the dots. There comes a moment when you finally understand. That setback was not an obstacle, but a rerouting towards something better. Psychologically, human beings are wired to cling to the familiar. We hold on to people, situations, dreams, even when they no longer serve us. And sometimes Allah removes something not because He wants to hurt us, but because He wants to free us from an attachment that would limit our growth. A person we lose may be the person who would have kept us stagnant. An opportunity that slips away may be the opportunity that would have distracted us from our true purpose. A delay that frustrates us may be shielding us from a burden we weren't prepared to carry. This subtle protection is a form of divine mercy so precise that we often recognize it only after the storm has passed. Think of how many times in life you prayed for something, convinced it was the best option for you. You envisioned its benefits, its promise, its happiness, but Allah knew the unseen. He knew the consequences you could not foresee. He knew the doors that would open or close depending on that one choice, and so He withheld it not as rejection but as protection. Not because the path you wanted was bad, but because the path He chose was better. This is why the believer learns to trust the unfolding even when it doesn't make sense. Because a closed door is not the end of the journey, it is the beginning of a different one, and the beauty is this: Allah does not merely replace what you lost. He often gives you something so perfectly suited to who you are becoming that you eventually look back and say, had it gone my way, I would never have reached this point. That realization is transformative. It shifts your entire worldview. You begin to walk through life with a deeper calm, a broader perspective, a quieter heart. You no longer fear what is taken from you because you understand that Allah does not subtract without intending to add. You no longer panic when plans change because you know that His plan has always contained layers of mercy you could not see. Even the timing of mercy is strategic. Sometimes Allah delays relief not to test you, but to align circumstances perfectly so that when the mercy arrives, it comes with wisdom, growth, and clarity. If it came too early, you might not appreciate it. If it came too late, you might not recognize it. But when it arrives exactly at the right moment, it transforms more than your situation. It transforms your heart. If you look closely at the moments that shaped you the most, you will often find that they were born out of situations you once begged Allah to remove. And yet those were the very moments that prepared you, purified you, and positioned you for the blessings that came later. Hold on to this truth as you walk through your own uncertainties. The mercy you are waiting for may already be unfolding in ways you cannot see. Stay patient, stay trusting. The hidden plan is often the greatest gift. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when they realize that the true transformation of pain into mercy is not tied to the outcome of the hardship, but to what that hardship does to their relationship with Allah. You might still be walking through the same challenge, still facing the same external difficulty, still carrying the same unanswered questions, and yet something inside you has shifted. The pain that once felt like a burden begins to feel like a bridge. The struggle that once pushed you away from Allah now pulls you closer. And it's in that shift that the deepest mercy unfolds. We often imagine mercy as rescue, as a sudden removal of the trial. But there is a kind of mercy that is far more profound than rescue, the mercy of awakening, the mercy of rediscovering Allah in a way you never had before. The mercy of feeling His nearness, His tenderness, His protection, even while nothing around you seems to change. When a believer uses hardship as a reason to approach Allah rather than a reason to retreat, that hardship turns into one of the greatest blessings of their life. There's a psychological truth behind this as well. Pain forces introspection. It strips away illusions. It exposes what we rely on, what we fear, what we desire, and in that vulnerability, the heart becomes honest. It begins to ask questions it never asked in times of comfort. It searches for meaning, for grounding, for stability beyond what the world can offer. When that search leads you to Allah, then the pain has already achieved what it was meant to achieve. Think of how many people rediscovered prayer only after they felt overwhelmed. How many poured their hearts into Du-2 BFA Macron only after life pushed them to their knees. How many realized the sweetness of tawakkul only after everything they trusted slipped out of their hands. It's not that ease cannot bring you to Allah, of course it can, but hardship tends to accelerate the journey. It compresses years of spiritual growth into moments. It ushers a person into a depth of sincerity that comfort rarely cultivates. And when a believer emerges from that experience with a stronger connection to Allah, then the pain has served its highest purpose. Some of the most beloved servants of Allah reached their spiritual peak through moments of vulnerability. Their tears became their healing, their brokenness became their bridge, their losses became their lessons. And their hardships carved into them a closeness to Allah that no amount of ease could have produced. When you reach a point where turning to Allah is no longer a last resort, but your first instinct, that is a transformation you can never place a price on, that is mercy in its purest form. And the beauty is that this closeness does not fade when the hardship eventually lifts. The person who was reshaped by pain carries that depth with them long after the trial is gone. The Du-2 BFA Macron becomes more heartfelt, the sujud becomes more meaningful, the gratitude becomes more sincere. They walk through life with a softer heart, a clearer vision, and a stronger sense of purpose. The trial ends, but the transformation remains. When Allah brings you closer to Him through a hardship, He has already given you more than what you thought you lost. Because the greatest gift He can grant is not a change in your circumstances, but a change in your heart. A heart that knows Allah, trusts Allah, seeks Allah, that heart has already received a mercy that no worldly ease can match. So reflect on your own pain with new eyes. If it pulls you closer to your Creator, if it deepens your Du-2 BFA Macron, if it awakens something inside you that had been silent for too long, then that pain has not harmed you. It has elevated you. Carry this truth with you. Any hardship that brings you nearer to Allah is not a hardship, it is a hidden mercy.